Thank you so much, parents. Thank you guys for such a beautiful, inspirational music. Really, thank you all, everybody. How many of you are enjoying the service today? Amen. I was enjoying it so much. Yes, please, every single person. And not just us, you see Aidan there at the camera. Caris is in charge of the sermon. So, it's a blessing to be here today. I was so enjoying it so much that I forgot that I had to preach. I'm like, well, what is it missing? I think we can go home now. I'm so blessed, and as family, we're so blessed and privileged to be here in Apopka. So don't, again, I said, and I'll never be tired of saying it, don't ever take coming to church for granted. You know how many people would love to be here, but they can't for different reasons. So always coming here with a thankful spirit is the best offering that we can give our Lord. Today's sermon, I want to talk about finishing the race. So I'm going to start with a question. How many of you love to run? Let me see your hands. Yes, I see. Okay, so those of you who raise your hands, God bless you. Frank, now you understand. I'm going to tell you, I used to love to run. I love the idea of running. I just don't love running anymore. But growing up, I love to run. I love to be engaged in races because it comes from the family. My dad used to run marathons when he was younger. I learned, the older that I get, we don't say you're older. No, we're just younger or, more experienced. So I'm going to talk to you about the first race I ever did in a huge group, like organized race. I always wanted to do a triathlon. For those of you who do not like running, well, add swimming and cycling. So a triathlon starts with swimming, then you go cycling, and then you finish running. Why? Because I don't know why, but I think that if you left the swimming to the end, probably some people would drown with the effort. It's intense. So you start swimming. The first time I did it, a friend of mine told me, let's do a triathlon. It's really easy. Okay, so what's the distance? He's like, this is called a sprint triathlon. It's the fastest, shortest distance that you can do. I'm like, okay, so what is it? Okay, so you're only gonna swim 800 meters. Then you're gonna bike 10 miles. And then you're going to run a 5K at the end, 3.2 miles. So it's not bad. I'm going to go, okay, that's not bad. I love the biking. That's my favorite part. So we started, I got, everybody on the line, and I saw, the group of people. Now they always say the most aggressive groups in a triathlon are men between the ages of 34 and 38. I don't know why, but, I felt it when I got in the water. It was literally a race of survival. I just saw people kicking and elbowing, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is intense. So, as I was trying to be on the first on the line and try to start, and as fast as I could, halfway through, everybody had already passed me. So, and this was in the swimming in South Beach, so it was intense. But then I made a mistake. Before the race, they give you a map where you can see, the whole, everything that you have to do. And when I was going to see the map for the last time, my friend told me, Freddy, don't worry about the map. Everything is marked. You don't have to worry about it. Just follow me. I learned a lesson. When it comes to racing or following instructions, do not depend on your friends. See, when I was swimming and I lost him in the swim, I never saw him again. So I got out of the water, I finally finished 800 meters. I hadn't swum in a long time, but I just wanted to do it with him. And where is he gone? So I get to my bike and, I get out of the water. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord. I got out of the water. When I look around, everybody's like running towards the bikes. And I'm like, oh man, but we just got off the water. Why do we have to run to the bike? Run to the bike, got in the bike, put the shoes on, took off. But then I noticed that people are passing me. And I'm like, okay, hold on. In the swimming, I understand. But cycling is my sport. What's wrong with me? And the faster, the hardest I was pedaling, I wasn't moving. And I was going to maybe, I haven't warmed up yet. But all of a sudden, I see a lady passing on a mountain bike next to me on my road. And I'm like, no, this is wrong. And as soon as I started, on my bike, I felt the need to check, but I didn't. I was so focused into I want to do it that I didn't check my bike. My back tire was flat. So I pedaled for a whole mile with a flat tire without looking. I was so focused on the goal that I forgot about checking myself, checking the equipment that I had. If I would have checked that before I got into my bike, there were mechanics right there next to the bike section. They would have come. They would have changed my tire, given me, I would have borrowed another one, and I would have lost no time. But because I didn't want to stop, I wanted to keep on going without checking what was going around me. I lost an hour just waiting for someone to come and replace the tire. 1 hour when the whole race takes about 52 an hour and 5 minutes. So, needless to say, I was one of the last. But I finished. And it got me to thinking, how many people start the race? And I realized that it is not about how you start the race, but it is about finishing the race. So for those of you who love running, I brought some running shoes. I went after, that, oh, by the way, I ran that race. Again, it was my first triathlon, but I didn't have the proper shoes. I ran the race with tennis shoes that are for playing tennis, not for running. And it makes a big difference. Your blisters will tell you about it. So I went to a store, and I found these shoes. These are called Newtons, Newton running. And what's the difference about these? I got there to buy, just tennis shoes, running store. I got there, and all of a sudden, the person who was there, he was a professional running coach. So he's like, okay, Freddy, so first, before you get some tennis shoes, I was just looking for, nice shoes, that ladies, that you like the color, And then he goes, listen, before we ever get to the shoes, I need to see how you run. And I'm like, what do you mean? Doesn't everybody run the same? He's like, no. There are people that run different ways. Some people have pronated arc. What does that mean? That they run, when they are running, they use the outside part of the sole. So when they run, so I was like, and he told me, listen, I'm going to give you some shoes. The way that you run, I think these shoes are going to be good for you. And I'm like, what's the difference about the shoes? When I looked at the price, I'm like, that's a big difference. And then he said, well, the key is that these shoes have something on the bottom, on the front of the shoe instead of the back. So you have to run yourself with the front of your foot. You don't use your heel. And I'm like, why? Well, babies naturally, when they run, when you look, they look like they're running on their toes. It's because that's the natural way of running. You do not, the more heel you use, the more tired you will be, the more energy you're going to lose. And I'm like, really? Wow. So then he gets, okay, so now that we got the shoes that you need to use, now I'm going to put you on the treadmill, and you're going to run, and I'm going to see exactly how you run. So I got in there. And when I started to run, he's like, I see that. And he's like, what is your faster time in a half marathon? By the way, I wanted to do the celebration, City of Celebration has a very nice marathon and half marathon. This was back in January 28, 2018. So the last Sunday of the month, Advent Health sponsors these races in the town of Celebration. So you run around the town. Beautiful race. So he told me, so what are you training for? I'm training for this specific race, the Celebration. But you know what? I've never been able to run half marathon. A half marathon is 13.1 miles. I've never been able to run it in less than 2 hours. My best record is 2 hours and 8 minutes. I've never been able to run faster than that. And he goes, let me see how you run. So I started running, and he said, Freddy, I'm going to give you a tip. And I'm like, okay, for this price of shoes, you better give me all the tips that you have. And he goes, listen, you have a problem. When you're running, your shoes are going ahead of your head. And I'm like, what do you mean? You have to use your head. It's all about the head. And I'm like, what do you mean? Your head has always to be leaned forward, looking forward. Don't look at the road. Look to the horizon. Look ahead of you. Run like you look at the finish line every single step that you take. And he says, when you run, instead of running like this, if you run up like that, your shoes, your feet are always going to be in front of you, in front of your chest and your head. So the way that you have to run, you have to lean. And your head has to lead your body. So when you're running ahead, and when you step on, you feel like almost like every step that you take, you're almost falling. And then your foot will take you, won't let you fall, but you continue to run like that. The other thing, you don't keep your feet so apart from each other. Try to keep them in a line, and almost one in front of the other one. That way you are losing less effort. If you just follow those tips, you're going to improve your speed 70% without changing any effort, without changing any, just practice that. So the day came, Pastor Javier Diaz, a good friend of mine, invited me to do this run. He runs marathons for fun. I run marathon for torture, but so he's like, Freddy, don't worry, I got you. You're gonna run with me. We're gonna go together the first few miles, and then he was gonna do the full marathon. I was only gonna do 13 miles. So he's like, don't worry, I got you. Half a mile into the race, he was gone. And I'm like, what do I do now? So much for friends, right? Again, when it comes to races, don't follow your friends. So another thing that I learned is that you need the proper shorts. Believe it or not, shorts make a big difference in the running. You don't use long shorts for the run because what? It takes a lot of friction. It also slows you down, and the more you run, the sweat, your shorts can become heavy, and they won't let you run as you should. So shorts are very, very important as well, to get a very good pair of shorts. Why do we have to race? You're probably thinking here, Pastor, I understand what you're saying, but I will never use those tips. I will never run a race. I'm going to tell you why all of us need to run a race. And it is called the race of faith. So I want you to open your Bibles in the first book of Corinthians to know the what. What is that we have to do? So the first question for today is the what. What are we going to do? And then we're going to go into why. Why do we have to run? And finally, we're going to learn the how. How we can run the race of faith. So in the first book of Corinthians, chapter 9, verse 24, 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24, it says, do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may what? Obtain it. So the what? The first question is the what. What is that we have to do? We have to run the race. And what is ahead of us? The prize. Now, what I love about doing triathlons and doing recreational races is that it doesn't matter if you get first or you get last. Everybody gets a medal as long as you finish the race. Everybody gets a medal. So it's not about getting first unless you're a pro and you're running for thousands of dollars. That would be a very good motivation. But in the face of, in the race, facing the race of faith is not about finishing first. It's about finishing the race. And I'm going to tell you today that today one of the biggest enemies to goals is how hard it is to finish. How many of you love to start a lot of things at the same time, and then you don't finish most of them? Don't raise your hands. Okay, all right. If you did, well, I'm right there with you. So a few years ago, so you don't feel bad about this, I found this book in a conference, and it's called Finish. Give yourself the gift of dawn. And I found that this week, again, as you can tell, I haven't finished, but I'm going to finish this week, I promise. You hold me accountable, okay? So, finish. And the reason why I got the book, again, Larry, the author of the book, John Acuff, he looks like he's your brother, man. If you look at him, he looks like, I'll show you the picture later on. But when I got the book and I attended the conference and John was signing the books and I was there, I was talking with him a little bit about it, and we found out that we're both pastor kids. So I got, we connected. And in writing his book, he wrote something amazing that I want to share with you. What is the number one enemy for finishing? Believe it or not, is called perfectionist. A lot of people don't finish things because we are perfectionists. And if we feel that if we committed one mistake, one flaw, it's not worth doing it anymore. Perfectionism is the number one enemy because he says that you have to do it on your own and you have to do it perfect. That's why you see a lot of people that, who wants to aim for B's or C's or D's? The culture says that we all have to aim for A's. So halfway through the semester, you're not going to get an A, you all get discouraged, but B is still good. B is still good. In Spanish, B is bueno. and you know how the system has shifted. It's changed now. It makes you think that you have to do all of these grades. And nowadays, and I'm thankful that, culture is shifting a little bit in the sense that parents now celebrate with their kids. And, parents and kids, they get now, I don't know about you guys, but when we were growing up, now you see the kids and they get the list before the school year begins, Now it's not just like a little page. No, it's like a book of things that they got to get, right? And all of you see these the people getting like, okay, for the letter A, and then they have to get a bunch of different things. Letter R, now you have to buy like a whole pound of rice because they have to glue the rice to the letter R and all of that. So, it's about letters now, the system, the greatest system. I don't know why what's wrong with an F? A kid, a parent that didn't understand the system. Oh, my kid got an F, that's good, and he's full of energy. Fantastic, right? Freddy, F. Listen to this. According to studies, 1,000 people were interviewed, asked why they don't finish what they start. And out of all of these people that were interviewed, they realized that 92% of New Year's resolutions fail. That means that out of 100 people, only 8 people will fulfill their New Year's resolutions. And you're like, Pastor, you should leave that sermon for January the 1st. No, you know why I'm telling you this now? What if we start our New Year's resolutions on December instead of waiting for January? What is the number one New Year's resolution? So what if we started on December instead of January? No, Pastor, you don't understand, because we just passed Thanksgiving, but we have Christmas and New Year's. But you see, that's the problem. When people diet, they believe that the diet has to be done every single day of every month of the year. And that's perfectionism. What if you can have, a balanced diet, and then on those 2 days you will eat what you like to eat? Us Hispanics, we have a lot of, different little things that are all fried, but they are so good. They are bad, but they're good. It's just amazing. But what if you just stop? Second enemy to finishing is called the day after. The day after you messed up. The day after you made a mistake. The day after you stopped, you said, no, I'm going to run every day. But for whatever reason, that day you couldn't run. So what happens? You quit. It's over. Perfectionism. Do not give to the temptation of perfectionism. It says, I can do all things through Christ. It doesn't say, I can do all things perfect. Because the Lord knows that we are not perfect. We live an imperfect world. We always aim for the best, but if you try to do it alone, you're going to fail and you are going to feel frustrated. Or fail frustration. I guess that's where the F comes. Anyways, I'm answering my own question. Think about, when was the last time that you made a promise and you failed? And what happened? You gave up. I'm going to buy flowers to my loved one. You forgot one. Well, I forgot. It doesn't count anymore. Yes, it does. What if we, instead of focusing on our mistakes, we focus on the things that are ahead of us? Which takes me to the next part, the how. How can we run the race of faith? How can we finish the race? And why is so important? Why do we have to run? Why do we have to finish? Jesus tells us why. In the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 13. Why do we have to finish? Why can't we quit, just stay halfway through? Jesus said to the disciples, talking about the end of times, he said, the one who endures, the one who perseveres, the one who doesn't quit to the end will be saved. If you forget everything, remember why we run the race of faith. Because Jesus is telling you and me today, don't quit. And I wanted to see, okay, how can I make sure that my church family won't forget about not quitting? Do not quit. I found a shirt on the Christian, I don't know where, but you can probably Google it. But I found this shirt. I love it. It's Active Faith. It's called Active Faith. So, and the shirt that I found says, I love it. It's found in the book of Luke, chapter 18, verse 1. And it's a Bible verse where Jesus he was giving a parable about never stop praying and always persevering. So let me see how we can do this so you can remember, okay? You will never forget. Never forget. Don't quit. When you feel down, when you feel tired, when you feel that you cannot do it anymore, remember, don't quit. Something else that John was doing in his research, why people quit doing things, he found out, he asked the people, he asked 1,000 people, have you ever written an idea? Or have you ever had an idea, but you didn't write it down because you thought it was dumb? Again, over 90% of the people said yes. They did not want to write an idea that they had because they thought it was dumb. Who is your worst enemy in making goals? Yourself. Why? Because we are always comparing to somebody else. Let me ask you a question. How many of you here have ever thought about writing a book? Let me see your hands. I'm not asking if you did it or not. But if you haven't, very good. I see some kids, you are ahead of us. Why do people quit even before starting? Because they think that it's not going to be good enough. But Jesus is telling you and me today, do not quit. Keep on going. Finish. Give yourself the gift of done, because Jesus already said it for you on the cross. He said, it is finished. It is done. Can you imagine if Jesus didn't finish? Can you imagine if Jesus quit on the Garden of Gethsemane when he was tempted not to go through the whole suffering? Can you imagine if Jesus was on the cross and he was like, you know what, Lord, I already proved to yourself I'm faithful to you. It's not worth dying for this human being. Look at these guys. Can you imagine Jesus had a conversation with the priest there when they were mocking him? I always thought about this. If I was Jesus, I would, when those guys were saying, come down the cross, and if you were the Son of God, I would have gone down the cross, and I'll be like, in your face, but I'm going back, I'm going to die for you. Thank God I'm not Jesus. But just to prove them that they were wrong. But Jesus didn't quit. And he didn't quit because he always prayed. Because he loved you so much. His prayer lifestyle helped him stay connected with God and connected with you and me in his beautiful, loving character, knowing that it was worth it. Even if we ourselves think that we don't deserve it, that we aren't worth it. Can you think about that for a second? If Jesus didn't quit for you, why do we have to quit ourselves? If Jesus said you are good enough, why do we think that we are not good enough? So next time that you have an idea, write it down and share with somebody. Share with people that love you. Don't quit. Don't give up. The apostle tells us exactly how we can run. So we learn, what do we have to do? Run the race. Why? Because Jesus is inviting us to run the race. Because Jesus didn't quit. Because Jesus didn't give up. And number 3, how can we run the race? The book of Hebrews. I love this passage. Book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. I love this Bible verse. Why? It is so important. Hebrews, chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. He says, why do we have to run? Listen to this. It says, therefore, in other words, he's telling us, because. Why do we have to run? Because we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Why do we have to run? Because there is a great cloud of witnesses. Pastor, what do you mean by that? Our lives, our world, it's a reality show for the whole universe. All people from other worlds are watching us, running the race. The angels are watching us. We are not alone. Jesus has given us all we need to finish the race and be successful in life. Amen. Jesus tells us that we can run. How? How can we run? I listened to the coach, and it was great. So when my friend took off in the marathon, I started to run, and I'm like, what can I do? But I saw there was a lot of people running with me. And then I looked up, and I saw that there were people that were holding signs while running. And I'm like, running is hard enough. Why would you have a sign with you? He's like, don't show off. Look, I'm running. But then I noticed that in those cartels that they had numbers there. And it said, I looked at different numbers, and I said one that said 157. And I'm like, wow. And I asked, hey, so what's that? It was another running coach, a lady, tall, super skinny. She was in great shape, and she's running with the sign. And I'm like, so what is that? It says that if you run with us, this group is going to do the half marathon in 1 hour, 57 minutes. And I'm like, how do you do that? Easy, just run with us. Stay with us. And that sounded better than it was. But you know what I said? I'm not going to look at the signs. I'm not going to look at people around. I'm just going to do what they do. And I learned that in the Christian race, the best way to finish the race is by, when we are together as Christians, we learn from each other. We depend on each other. We cheer each other. You know, the funny thing about this and what encouraged me was that I found a group. It was like 4 ladies and a guy, and they were running together. They were all in their early 50s. Very young. I'm learning. I was a little younger. I said, I'm just going to run with these guys. And you know what? I realized something. That these guys that do it for a living and that they enjoy doing this, they were just talking the whole time to each other. And I said, I'm just going to listen to them. Because if I talk, I'm going to pass out. So I was just running next to them. And I decided, I'm just going to stay with them. I'm going to stay focused. I'm going to stay looking at the sign. We have a sign. Jesus put the sign on the cross. He said, if I am lifted up, I will draw all men to me. Amen. So when you're giving up, look at the cross. Like in the desert when the people of Israel were beat by the snakes, the sign was, look at the cross. And they looked at the cross and they were healed. So when you feel like giving up, when you feel like quitting, remember, look at the cross. Look at Jesus, because he has already finished the race for you. Amen. And finally, it says in verse 2, looking up to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. How many of you want to be at the throne of God? Well, let me tell you, for you and me to be at the throne of God, we have to do what Jesus did. Jesus endured the pain. There is no throne without the cross. There is no cross without suffering. But at the end, it is all worth it. So I'm here to tell you today that Jesus wants us to finish the race. How can we do it? Was the Apostle Paul perfect that he wrote all of these things about running? No. Philippians chapter 3, verses 13 and 14, book of Philippians, chapter 3, verses 13 and 14, tells us that the Apostle Paul was not perfect. He was far from being perfect. The Apostle Paul, he says, no, dear brothers and sisters, I am not all I should be. Have you ever felt that you are incomplete? That you are not good enough? The Apostle Paul felt like that every day of his life. He said, I am not what I should be, but I am focusing all of my energies in one thing. forgetting the past, forgetting the failures, forgetting the day that I messed up, forgetting the day that I fell into temptation, forgetting the day that I sinned against God, forgetting the day that I spoke harsh words to my family, forgetting the day that I didn't do what I was supposed to do, forgetting about the day that I did things that I wasn't supposed to do. I strain to reach the end of the race and receive the prize for which God, through Christ Jesus, is calling us up to heaven. Amen. God has given you and me the ways to doing it. Ephesians 2:10 says that Jesus had not already called us, but has also equipped us for success. You are God's masterpiece. That's what Ephesians 2:10 says. You are Christ's masterpiece. But a lot of us spend a lot of time whining about the pieces that we don't have, the pieces that we are missing. Have you ever tried to do a puzzle, and when you were almost done, you realized that there were one or two pieces missing? How did you feel? It feels bad. A lot of times we spend our lives making a puzzle with incomplete pieces, and we just spend whining about the pieces that we don't have. Instead of complaining to the master about the missing pieces in your life, look at the master and realize that you are God's masterpiece. Amen. And finally, at the end of the run, the Apostle Paul encourages us to be ready. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7. You see, we just read in Philippians, the Apostle Paul saying, I am not there yet. I'm not good yet, but I look at Jesus. I run looking at Jesus. But one morning, the Apostle Paul woke up and he received the news that Emperor Nero had given the news. Apostle Paul, sorry. Can you imagine the soldier that was with the Apostle Paul all the time? The soldier that talked to the Apostle Paul, listened to the Apostle Paul praying, realized the Apostle Paul was a good person, that probably the Apostle Paul even prayed for this soldier, and now this soldier has the burden in his heart to tell him, Apostle Paul, I am so sorry, but the emperor has given the news. You are to die today. How would you feel? What would you do? This is what the Apostle Paul said. 2 Timothy 4:7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Finally, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day, and not to me only, but also to all who have loved his appearing. One of my favorite places on earth is Hawaii. When I was a little boy, and this is about goal setting, guys. And by the way, young adults, this Friday night, 7 o'clock, we're going to resume our meetings, and we're going to talk about how to set our goals for next year. So if you're a young adult, 18 and older, we have a special program for you on Friday night. So when I was a little boy, I said, I don't know who I'm going to marry. I know that I'm going to get married one day. Unlike girls, the little boys don't dream with the perfect wedding. You know? I don't know about you guys, but the boys, we think about the perfect honeymoon. So I was like, I don't know where I'm going I don't know who I'm going to marry. I don't know. But I know that my honeymoon, I want to go to Hawaii. That was my dream as a little boy. That was my dream. Don't ever stop dreaming. And dreams are possible if you focus your life on Jesus and you allow Jesus to find the right one for you. You want to know how Jesus found the right one for me? Coming up on Valentine weekend, you will hear another sermon because that's a whole sermon. But I want to tell you this. We went to Hawaii. We had an incredible, incredible adventure with Ruby. We did things we had never done. We went on a helicopter ride. We went on a submarine ride. I took my wife to the extremes of life. And because she loved me, she endured the race. But it was time to come back. We were a little bit depressed. You know, it was over. We had to go back to real life. And we were on the airport. And we were sitting there, waiting for the airplane to come. The plane was a little bit delayed. It was December 2004. And finally, we decided to study the lesson, read the Bible, you know, as the airplane was coming. So the two of us were trying to read something. And all of a sudden, I hear this noise in the gate. There was a loud noise. Someone screaming and making all sorts of awkward noises. And at first I was bothered. Then I was intrigued because the noises were louder and louder and louder. And I'm like, what's going on? And then I was looking, who's making the noise? Have you ever been in a place that or in a supermarket when you hear a little kid making noises and you're like, I wish I was the mother, I wish I was the father. I felt like that. Who's this girl that is making these noises and where are the parents? My judgmental. And all of a sudden, I noticed that sitting in a wheelchair, there was this girl. She couldn't walk. She couldn't talk. She couldn't stand up. She was special. She was different than everybody else. But she was very excited. She was making all of these noises. And you could see people walking into the room and listening to the noise. You could see their faces. And then when they looked, their faces changed. And all of a sudden, the airplane came. And the gates were opened. And every different people were coming out of the airplane. A lot of different people coming out of the airplane. And at the very end, among a group of soldiers that were coming back from the war, there is this tall, strong soldier that comes out of the airplane. And when this tall soldier came off the war, you could see this girl just screaming, trying to get up, and she couldn't. And she was smiling, and she was screaming with all of her heart. And she was so excited because Daddy had finally come home from the war. I don't know about you, but at that moment, we got all emotional because we could see this little girl. She was far from being perfect. She couldn't talk like everyone. She couldn't act like everyone. She couldn't walk like everyone. But she didn't care about any of those things because her eyes were put on her daddy, the strong soldier that had come home. Dear family, I don't know about you, but so many times in life I feel like that little girl. Different, rejected, noisy. But when I look at Jesus, and when I think about Jesus' second coming, and when I think about all the things that he has done for me, when I think that he didn't quit for me, that he said it is finished, and I say, Lord, I am far from being perfect. I don't know how to walk with you. I don't know how to talk to you, but I love you, Lord, and I want to do whatever it takes so that when you come in glory, I can see you face to face. Would you like to join me today? And giving thanks to the Lord, standing up with your family, say, Lord, I don't know how, but I don't want to give up. I don't want to quit. I want to pursue the race. I want to finish the race. But I cannot finish the race on my own, Lord. It is hard. It is impossible. But if I can only put my eyes on Jesus, the author, the Redeemer, the one that makes me, my imperfections perfect, then, Lord, help me to finish the race. Dear Heavenly Father, we are here today, and we are thankful. As the Apostle Paul says, Lord, in 1 Corinthians 15, may all we give you thanks, O Lord, because yours is the victory, and you give the victory to us. Forgive us, Lord, for the many times that we complain about the missing pieces in our lives. But as we look at Jesus today, help us, remind us that we are your masterpiece. Forgive us, Lord, because we have quit. We have quit loving you above all the things in this world. We have quit loving each other the way that we are supposed to love each other, Lord. Help us to stop criticizing each other. Help us to stop looking our missing pieces, and help us to be complete in Jesus. Thank you for your love. Thank you for all the things that you do. When all things are said and done, give us the joy of finishing the race with you forever. In Jesus' holy name, and all of your children say, Amen. Amen.